Macabre Cast.
The devil's on the loose and he's dancing with the mummy.
Doc Mark and Chorus, the Little Mummy, here to bring you another episode of Macabre Cast, where we'll be dropping R's where they belong and adding them where they don't. So I caught X from 2022 on Netflix, starring Mia Goth and Jenna Ortega. This takes place in 1979, and a group of young adults set off to make their own porn film. And this is when the home video market was in its infancy. And so the idea here is they all are off to become rich. So they rent this farm from this older gentleman named Howard and his wife Pearl, where they can make this film. They can stay there and make this film, unbeknownst obviously to the owners of the place. And the movie's beautifully shot. A lot of really great cinematography in this film, and very believably taking place in the 70s. Go into this film as cold as you possibly can if you, at this point, don't know anything about it other than what I've said. And I think that the setups will be much better the colder you go in. The film's implications about the inevitability of age and getting very old and losing our beauty are very well played. But a couple things I want to mention that I really liked about the film. If you haven't seen, maybe skip ahead so I don't spoil some of the best, what I think were the best scenes. One shot has a girl swimming in this lake, and very casually, as the camera pans over, we notice over in the glades a gator is kind of just hanging out. Then the shot changes to high above, where you can barely almost see the girl as she's swimming back to the dock, and very slowly coming into the frame is this gator that's kind of stalking her. Really intense and unexpected. And this sets up a scene later in the film, and it really pays off. This movie ended up being much more violent and bloody than I expected, and I was happy to see. And Mia Goth actually plays two characters, the young girl Maxine and the old woman Pearl, which I didn't even realize till I read the cast. Much like Texas Chainsaw Massacre, these people find themselves in a very bad situation, but it's far too late by the time that they realize this. Movie's pretty intense, and I did enjoy it and highly recommend it. I just don't want to say too much more because, as I said, the colder you go in, the better the film is. News reports had stated that A24 was stopping production on their Crystal Lake series, but they've released another statement saying that this is completely not true, that they're just going through some retooling of the show, and that it is still going full steam ahead, which I'm glad, because I really looked forward to this series based on the Friday the 13th films. That's Brownie, the corpse-sniffing dog, and he agrees.
Hey Doc Mark and Karis, Hard Chat Matt here. Want to discuss a recent purchase that I just made. One of my all-time favorite movies and cinematic characters is the 1933 King Kong. Just an absolute masterpiece of a movie, and I've always enjoyed the character in pretty much every film he's ever appeared in. One I've been waiting a long time to get on Blu-ray, as it hasn't been available in the United States, is the 1976 remake. The only way you could get it on Blu-ray was from an overseas market. I did manage to track down a Chinese import, which was a pretty decent copy. A lot of the better ones were very expensive, but it was definitely watchable, but it kind of irked me that it had Chinese writing on the cover. Somebody at the studio got their act together and released a beautiful Stalebox 4K edition of King Kong 76, which also has the theatrical version as well as the TV extended cut, which is about a little bit over an hour of extra footage and scenes that were shot for TV to fill around commercials. But in terms of actual runtime, it's probably only about 45 minutes of additional footage, as they did about a 15-minute recap of the first half of the movie. So they must have split it up into 2 nights when it was shown on TV. I immediately popped it into the Blu-ray player upon receiving it, and I have to say, I think overall it really still holds up pretty good. Obviously, the special effects aren't as good as the 2005 Peter Jackson remake, which I think is a amazing movie, if not a little bit long, but I don't mind the length of that movie. The special effects were obviously a little dated in this one, but I always enjoy good practical effects and the workmanship that went into it, including a lot of the in-camera magic that they did to make this movie as impressive as it was for the time. One of the things I always remember about the 76 movie growing up was reading comics, the older comics back then. They had the movie poster and an ad on the back cover of a lot of the comic books of King Kong standing on top of the World Trade Centers, which was a change from the original 33 movie. Instead of the Empire State Building, he climbed the World Trade Centers. And I thought it was pretty fun, nostalgic trip to go back and watch this movie. What are your thoughts on the 76 remake, Dark? I'm curious if you were a fan or if you prefer the original. I think there's room for all of them. Even the more newer ones, the goofy ones with Godzilla and stuff like that, which are more like video games these days, but I still enjoy them for what they are. Anyways, keep up the great work, Mark, of bringing the macabre to all your legions of monster kids.
So the very first horror movie or / monster movie that I saw, and I've said this before, was the original 1933 King Kong on TV. And I remember I probably was possibly 5 or maybe almost 6. So when the remake came out in December of 1976, I was 7, just about to turn 8. And this was a time when going to the movies with your parents was like this big event. Like you went out to dinner, then after the dinner you went to the film, and then you came home. It was an all-night event. And this is also at a time when big money producers used to put their name all over the film. And I've brought this up before, and this was Dino De Laurentiis. It would say a Dino De Laurentiis production, because it was this big deal, and all his money was into this film. I was primed for this movie. I was the perfect age. There were so many posters and toys, and I had the lunchbox. I had the Color It In Yourself poster. This was all before I even saw the film. My knowledge of the World Trade Center was because of this movie. They began building the trade centers in 1968 and finished by 1971. So they were, 5 years old at this point, these buildings, and they completely trumped the Empire State Building. You're going to have Kong climb something in New York, it's got to be the tallest tower or towers, right? Oh, gee, Karis, I'm glad you could make it. Don't worry about it. You're not late much.
Sorry. No, I have a doctor's note. Here.
Well, doctor's notes don't mean anything, so that doesn't matter. But aside from that, I was in the middle of talking about the 1976 remake of King Kong. So if I could get back to that, please.
Sure, don't mind me. Go ahead. I'll just sit over here. I'll be quiet.
Thank you. Now, as I was saying, I know I might lose my monster card for this, but I think I kind of probably like it better than the 33 version. And the later on, the Jackson one. And I know I've got people throwing tomatoes at their phone and their TV, but I mean, it was just the perfect timing. It's what I grew up with. I mean, I was 7 going on 8. It was just perfect, and it holds big memories for me. As always, though, a great topic. Keep bringing them, Matt. That was great. I love the 76 version of King Kong, and I don't care if the effects don't hold up. They hold up for me. Like heck, I said my favorite Godzilla film was Godzilla vs. the Smog Monster. Take a gander at those effects.
Is this something you could share with the rest of us, Amazing Larry?
Greetings, Dark Mark and Karis the Little Mummy. Scary Larry here. New week, new movie, new review. On a recommendation from my sister, I watched 2019's Villains, available on Shudder and other various pay sites. I saw previews for it, but I never watched, and better late than never. It's billed as a horror comedy drama, and that's an accurate description. It's a small casted movie that becomes a game of cat and mouse. First, it's a crime caper, and we're introduced to Mickey and Jules, played brilliantly by Bill Skarsgård of It fame, and Makey Monroe, not sure if I got that name right, who starred in the creepy horror It Follows. These 2 bumbling criminals are holding up gas stations and convenience stores to raise money to escape to Florida and open their own beachside business. Plans quickly go awry when their getaway car runs out of gas in a rural area. Heard this trope before? No worries. They spot a house and break in, looking for either gas or keys to another car. They get more than they bargained for when, searching the basement, they find a girl chained to the wall. Now they hatch a plan to rescue this girl when the homeowners come home. George and Gloria, a rather quirky couple played by Jeffrey Donovan of Burn Notice and the iconic Kyra Sedgwick. First, Mickey and Jules capture the homeowners, only to be double-crossed by the little girl who seems to be displaying a touch of Stockholm Syndrome. Turns out these 2 chuckleheads let themselves be captured by 2 crazed killers, and it's a hysterical back and forth of escape, recapture, I won't kill the ending. Good amount of violence and gore towards the end, with an interesting conclusion. I give this one 3 stars since I was constantly annoyed with Jules always managing to make the wrong decision, but definitely a guilty pleasure watch.
Oh, listen, the sound of putridness. You know it's time for Horrible Mention. And today's Horrible Mention, believe it or not, is by Wes Craven, and it's 1986's Deadly Friend. This was supposed to be a sci-fi thriller about dark love and a story that had characters in it that were not typical of Craven's other films, but test audiences hated it, and they just wanted to know where all the blood was. Warner Brothers executive vice president Mark Canton demanded reshoots and more blood. This film was drastically altered in post-production, and we can tell. So basically, the general story is Paul and his mom move into this new neighborhood, and they're living next door to this girl, Samantha, who's his age, and her abusive father. Paul's a pretty smart kid. He builds this robot named BB that has human-like behavior. He's very protective of Paul. And during one of Samantha's father's abusive tirades, he pushes her down the stairs, killing her, and she's brain dead. But don't worry, folks. Paul uses BB the robot's microchip to jumpstart Samantha, and bada boom, bada bing, BB/Samantha starts wreaking bloody havoc. There's a lot of gore in this film, but it's just, when it wants to be funny, I don't think it is. It's just, I remember as a teenager watching this in the theater going, I can't believe this is the guy that made A Nightmare on Elm Street. But I guess he can't be blamed on him. He tried to do something different and they didn't let him. Then they kind of forced him to do this. So it's probably really not even his fault that this movie is as bad as I think it is. And there you have it, this week's Horrible Mention. Wes Craven's 1986 film, Deadly Friend.
I dated a robot once. Just once.
This is why you're getting very little mic time today. Maybe you should go back to the doctor because I don't think you've been fixed.
Maybe I have COVID. Is that still an automatic 5 days off?
No, they changed it back to 10. See you in 2 weeks.
Hey, Doc. No Grim Kim again this week.
Well, Karis, I mean, people have lives. They can't just devote all their time to talking about monster movies. I mean, we don't really hear from Tina from Chicago very much, or Whitney of Brittany, for that matter. You're not bringing them up. Let's not forget, Monster Kids. I want to continue last week's Deep Death Dive, where I asked you to take a film that if you could change something in that particular film that you feel would make it better or might change the whole franchise as we know it. And don't forget to check out, if you haven't already, my new channel, Terror, where I have written, directed, produced, and scored new old-time radio shows, spooky shows, like in the vein of Suspense and Lights Out and the like. Until next time, stay on the road, keep clear of the moors, and beware the moon. But most of all, be good to yourself. This is Dark Mark, signing off. See you soon.
This is a Macabre Theater production.